Welcome to episode 8 of the Mindset Advantage podcast with Dr. Tricia Cardner and Elliot Rowe. So Tricia, tell us about yourself.
Everyone, I am the author of Positive Poker, and I do mental game coaching for up-and-coming as well as elite poker players, and I do mental game coaching over at Red Chip Poker.
And my name's Elliot, and I specialise in hypnotherapy for poker players and UFC fighters. This week we've got Ike Haxton, who's a Team PokerStars Online Pro, coming on to talk to us about how mindset has impacted him over his poker career. But before that, what news have you got for us this week, Tricia?
Elliot, have you ever wondered the impact that listening to music can have on a person while they're playing poker?
It's actually something that quite a few of my clients have mentioned as to whether there's sort of a better type of music to be listening to. So what's come up?
Well, there's been some research. Now, it has to do with athletes, so keep that in mind. Nobody's done it with poker yet, but there's been some interesting findings. For example, research shows that country music improves batting, rap music improves jump shots, and people who are doing running, any up-tempo music will improve your running. You know, you'll run longer, faster, whatever. Now, those are all sort of, super athletic-y sports. So in a recent study that I found, they looked at golfers, and basically they had golfers listen to music, and they included classical, country, rock, jazz, hip-hop, and there was a no music condition to see which version would make you putt the best. And would you care to guess which one was the most helpful to golfers?
I'd guess classical.
That is a great guess, but interestingly enough, jazz was the best genre. Now, this is what the idea was. And by the way, this can be found in the Journal of Athletic Enhancement and the 2014, I think it was like November 2014 edition. But anyway, they found the only condition that did not help was no music. Every kind of music at least provided some benefit, but jazz provided the most. And they thought it was because the jazz had like a calming effect, whereas if you listen to something up-tempo, it can increase your level of arousal.
And that's actually really interesting that no music was a negative, because there are some players who actually hold themselves back from listening to music whilst playing poker in case it's an issue. But I would think the sort of the pressure of thinking through a putt on a golfing green is very similar to the sort of feelings that people are going to have on a poker table.
That's kind of what I thought. So I'm thinking since, research hasn't been done with poker players, so players are going to have to do a little experimentation for themselves. But I would definitely try and listen to some different genres of music and just see, what impact it has on your game.
Yeah, so nothing definitive, but definitely worth giving a try to. And if you've never listened to music during your poker, worth giving it a try at least once or twice just to see if your focus does start to increase. Great tip this week. Thanks, Tricia. And we've got Ike coming on now. He's, as I said, a PokerStars Online Pro. He's in a lot of online high-stakes games. He plays No Limit. He also plays PLO online. But he's also had a lot of success in live tournaments with over $9 million of cashes in live tournaments as well. So he's coming on now. So we'll just give him a ring. So thanks, Ike, for coming on the show. If you could tell our listeners about yourself and your poker story.
Hey, yeah, it's a pleasure to be on here. I've been around poker for a while at this point. I started playing my freshman year of college back in, I guess it was 2004 or so. I played a little bit of live and online poker, both early on in my career. Started out playing Limit Hold'em, playing pretty small stakes, and ran pretty hot early on and moved up pretty quickly. By the end of my first year, I was playing like 15-30, 30-60 Limit Hold'em. And yeah, over the years, transitioned to No Limit, started playing some tournaments. In the last couple of years, I've been playing PLO as well. For the past few years, I've been a member of PokerStars Team Online. Yeah.
Yes. So quite the poker history.
Been around a little while at this point.
So over those years and all the sort of changes you've seen in poker, how important's mindset been for you in terms of your success at the table, be it online or live?
I think it's made a big difference. I've seen a lot of people over the course of my career come and go because their mindset and things about their approach to the game, apart from the hand-to-hand strategic decision-making were not as good as they could have been and interfered in their ability to play poker professionally in the long run. In
I
a
was
lot of
going to
different ways. Some people just tilt and throw away their money. Some people can't focus and get the hours in. And I've always taken those parts of the game seriously and to a pretty significant extent had them come fairly naturally to me. So I think that has made a big difference to me over the years.
I was going to kind of ask you about that in terms of what would be the most common ways you see people kind of get in their own way of success?
That's a tricky question. There really are a lot. One thing that I think doesn't get talked about that much, but that can be a big issue, is when people get their ego too wrapped up in how great they are at poker and allow that to interfere in their ability to learn. They don't want to ask other people's opinions or review their own play or watch videos or anything like that because they're sort of subconsciously afraid of coming into contact with evidence that they're making mistakes and that they're not as good as they'd like to think they are.
That definitely makes sense. The confidence plays a huge role in how people feel at the table and then how they play. And there's definitely a lot of guys who shy away from finding out something they know is right could actually be wrong.
Yeah.
In terms of integrating study into your week, sort of how do you work on your game now after all of these years in the game?
Reviewing my own play, just going through Poker Tracker, and I'll tag hands while I'm playing, which is, I think, a feature that's been around forever, but I only discovered somewhat recently. That there's a little button on the HUD you can hit to tag a hand for review later. I've been using that a bunch recently, and that's pretty nice. And yeah, looking at what my opponents are doing, both in individual hands and looking at, frequencies on a macro level, talking about hands with people, the usual things.
And percentage-wise, what sort of percentage poker to study do you do?
That varies a lot for me. Well, for one thing, I play pretty high stakes, so some weeks it's really busy and some weeks there's almost no action. And in a busy week, it might be 90-10 poker to studying or even more. But then on another week, it could be close to the inverse. I'll play almost no poker and spend a lot of hours studying. So I guess over the course of my career, I've probably averaged maybe 75% actually playing or a little less.
Okay.
Now, back in the day, you were playing No Limit Hold'em, Heads Up, and people didn't want to play with you. So how has that changed? Is it still the case that, people are a little bit hesitant to play with Ike Haxton, or are you getting more takers these days?
Well, there's definitely a short list of people who are eager to play me who I've been reluctant to play against myself, but the list of people, professional players who think they have an edge on me and want to play Heads Up No Limit, or Heads Up PLO for that matter, with me is still pretty short, but it's not zero.
And I read in a previous interview you'd done that you're interested in meditation. And now a lot of the work I do is guided meditation. Hypnosis is it under another name. And Trish has actually also written a lot about meditation in the book. So how do you feel that the meditation helps you as a poker player?
I think it's enormously useful. I start almost every day by meditating for 5 to 20 minutes, depending on how much time I can spare or how motivated to sit still for 20 minutes I'm feeling. And on days where I skip it, it's really noticeable to me that my focus and emotional control and everything like that is much worse. Yeah, I find it hugely helpful. I have better focus, more stamina, can put in more hours playing at a higher level.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I've seen that a large percentage of the higher stakes players I work with meditate frequently.
Yeah.
It certainly seems to be very big in the community, and as I say, obviously, I certainly agree with them. In terms of how you see poker moving forward over the next few years, what are you expecting to see?
It's really hard to say. No Limit Hold'em seems to be a little bit on the way out, at least in the cash game format. No Limit tournaments don't appear to be going anywhere, but it doesn't feel to me like there's that much money to be made as a No Limit cash game player these days, at least relative to other games. Right now, PLO feels like a pretty good place to be. I think mixed games are growing. I wouldn't be surprised to see games that are presently not at all popular take off in the next 3 to 5 years. It seems like definitely if you look at the highest stakes live poker, people are eager to play new games. The specialists in the established games have gotten so good that it's really more fun for everybody to play something a bit novel. So in that climate, being good at learning new games is going to be increasingly important, I think.
What do you think about the likelihood of online poker coming back in full force to the United States? Do you think that's on the horizon, or do we still have a long way to go, in your opinion?
I'm really not an expert on it. I can't really stomach thinking about American politics for too long, so I pretty much accept that it's out of my control, and I will do what I have to do with the way the world progresses. I can't say I'm hugely optimistic. There seems to be a lot of money laid out against online poker interests, so that doesn't
bode well in American politics.
Well, speaking of large outlays of money, you were a long time ago, and maybe some of our listeners will remember this, you had about $800,000 stuck back in the, net teller days or whatever it was. Yeah. How tilting was that? Did it change your game? Were you worried about it, or did you just go on as normal?
It was pretty upsetting. At the sort of trough of my expectations for how that could play out, it seemed pretty likely that it would produce a situation where my net worth was very negative, because I had been advised that I was going to owe taxes on that money even if I never got it back. And it was a big fraction of my net worth. So I was looking at having just won close to $1 million and being left in $250,000 of debt to the IRS. So I was pretty stressed out about that. I don't think it affected my play at the tables all that much, though I did happen to go on a fairly bad downswing over the period of time where that money was in limbo. It was certainly stressful.
And possibly not coincidental as well. If the downswing came just at that time, that sounds like something that could have easily been connected.
It certainly could have. I can't rule that out.
Then I guess you were a little more equipped to go through it again with the whole, full tilt, absolute, and all that business.
Yep. Yeah, it was less of an existential threat to my career the second and third times around that I've had to deal with those sorts of things.
And I mean, some players moved away from online and just wanted to play live for a while. Is that something that you were ever tempted to do? So sort of rather than move away to somewhere you could play, just go and sit in the live game somewhere instead?
Not really. I don't really like playing live cash games all that much. I've been trying to work on that. I do think there's money to be made in live cash games, and it would be good to be more open to taking those opportunities when they present themselves. But yeah, I find everything about the live cash game experience kind of frustrating. There's so much waiting around for a seat in the game, and the game moves so slow even once you're all playing. You're getting to play a couple hundred hands a day. You can be a professional live cash game player for sure, but it sounds like a tough life to me. It sounds like you have a lot of 6-month losing streaks, and I wouldn't particularly like that.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up, back early in your career, you had set a goal for yourself, or at least this was what was reported, that to make $1 million in a year, mm-hmm. which you did end up doing. A lot of people say, as poker players, you shouldn't make these monetary goals, but I love it that you did make that goal and you did achieve it. But what are your present thoughts about that kind of goal setting for poker players?
Yeah, I think monetary goal setting is typically not a good way of going about things. And even in that case, it's not exactly the case that set a specific monetary goal. It was more that the context that came up in was the UIGEA passed, and I was deciding whether or not to take a year off from school to play full-time before UIGEA went into effect, and potentially playing online poker from the US ceased to be an option. So it was more, I was estimating what I thought I could expect to make in a year than that I was specifically setting myself a target.
It's a sort of an achievable level of income if everything goes correctly.
Right. It was just, weighing the pros and cons of taking a year off from school. It seemed like a relevant factor to try to quantify how much money I thought I would make.
And then you did take the time off, you did make the money, and you went back to school and finished. Is that right?
Yeah, I only had 1 year left, and I figured I may as well get it done before I'm the weird old guy on campus.
And one of the things I'd seen is that you came from a background in chess and magic as well. This is something that comes up an awful lot with people that we talk to. I mean, we had Jen from Team Online on the radio show. We've had Jonathan Little on. She came from chess. He came from magic as well. What do you think sets people up to be able to play professional poker coming from those other games?
To some extent, I think it's partly just coincidental in the sense that the people with the personality types and interests to want to be a professional poker player and to succeed as a professional poker player are likely to have gravitated to those sorts of things when they were younger. But in addition to that, I do think I learned a lot about how to study a game and how to become proficient in a game from my experiences in chess and magic. And I think that's pretty common with other people who come from those backgrounds.
With poker, a lot of people, they see it on TV, and that's how they get introduced to it. So for folks like that, what do you recommend for them becoming proficient in the game? What would you see as kind of the ideal, learning path or study path?
I think it varies a lot from one person to the next. Some people are much more intuitive learners and just learn by doing. And I think that for those people, very likely, at least early on, most of the improvement is to be made just by playing and paying close attention to what you're doing and what your opponents are doing and what seems to be working and what doesn't. Other people, and this is the category I fall into, are more systematic, academic sort of learners. And for them, I think that finding good instructional material is important, whether that's books or videos or one-on-one coaching. And then if you're that sort of learner relatively early on, you're also going to want to learn how to teach yourself in a systematic fashion. You're going to want to learn how to study your hand histories and use the various available software tools and stuff like that to study on your own.
And how important do you think that one-on-one coaching is for players? Is that something that you feel really would cut down the learning time, or would you say read a few books first, get a background knowledge, and then start with some coaching with somebody?
I think it can be very useful. At points in my career, it's been very useful to me, specifically when I was transitioning from no limit hold'em, or from limit hold'em to no limit hold'em. I had a coach who was extremely helpful to me. But I do think it's probably worthwhile to get a bit of a foundation before you move into that. You do want to be able to think critically about what your coach is telling you, because there are at least as many terrible coaches out there as good ones. So if you're not prepared to critically evaluate the instruction you're getting, you're likely to get bad instruction and learn unhelpful ideas.
And then for the moving up, so perhaps for someone who's playing mid-stakes currently, who wants to reach the high stakes, what sort of advice would you have for those players?
Those are the players, I think, who are probably best positioned to benefit from one-on-one coaching. If you can find somebody who is excelling at the level that you want to reach, it's very likely that they can teach you some things you don't already know.
And obviously, when we're talking about coaching at those highest levels, they're going to be pretty extortionate prices, aren't they? I mean, I've heard of $1,500 plus an hour for coaching. Yeah. Is that something you would say to people, look, if you are moving up from mid-stakes, that's probably good value?
Again, you need to think critically about who you're working with and what they're actually providing you. But if you think about the amount of poker you're playing and the stakes you're playing it at, and how much a very small improvement in your win rate is worth, it becomes clear that you can justify almost any expense to get a little bit better at poker if you're a professional high-stakes player.
Well, Elliot, it sounds like we need to raise our rates because
yeah, apparently we're too cheap.
Mental game coaching is, kind of one of the most untapped elements, I think, for many players. They just, everybody knows get a technical coach or strategy coach, read the books, get the videos, but not everybody knows or thinks about getting a mental game coach.
That's true.
And I mean, you mentioned earlier that you felt that you dealt with tilt pretty well throughout your career. Do you think that was a natural personality trait, or is it something that you needed the meditation to get yourself into that state?
I've only been meditating for the past 5 years or so, and I never had much of a tilt problem even before that. Really what got me interested in meditation in the first place had more to do with dealing with depression and motivation issues and anxiety and stuff like that, rather than all of which tended to go away as soon as I was actually playing poker. It tended to impact other parts of my life more, but...
And would they impact volume as well? Because obviously the motivational issues, depression issues, these are things that people talk to me about quite a lot and saying their mindset is really stopping them being able to open the tables, open the lobbies. Is that something that was happening with you?
Yeah, on occasion it did, for sure. So yeah, in that respect, it has helped my mental game with poker. Tilt specifically is just not really a thing I've ever struggled that much with. I tend to be a bit emotionally flat in all aspects of my life. I just don't react very much to things, and especially not to results in poker.
You found the right job then.
But people shouldn't underestimate, the rates of depression and anxiety. If we look outside of poker, depression is basically the common cold of, the mental health world, because it's at least 1 out of 5 people worldwide suffers from depression, and anxiety is a little bit lower rates, but still very significant. And it can impact you no matter what your profession. But it is really hard, I think, in the poker world because, it's such a solitary type of game, and, it has its downswings and just so much of that.
And have you got a lot of life balance outside of poker so that these downswings don't affect you? Or is it just that it genuinely just doesn't affect you and you can just deal with it?
I would not say life balance is one of my strengths. I spend a lot of my life on poker, and apart from my relationships with my wife and my family and my close friends, I don't have all that much else going on, which I'm pretty okay with. I enjoy poker very much and find it a very consuming pursuit. So at this point in my life, I'm pretty okay with being a little unbalanced.
Well, I think so long as it's not coming into your game. So usually where the people have the issue is if poker consumes them and then getting a bad hand, having a bad session, then throws them into a depression. They need the life balance to balance that out. If you're absolutely balanced with your poker and you can deal with those bad weeks, then obviously the life balance isn't quite so important for your success at the table.
Yeah, I've found that to be fairly true in my life.
And on those sort of down days when, if you do wake up in a bad mood or you're just feeling a little bit off, and then you notice that there's someone at a table you should really be playing, will you play them anyway, or will you hold off if you don't feel your mind's quite right before taking that seat?
It's not really a binary thing. If I wake up feeling, maybe about a 3 out of 10, and there are very good games, I'll play anyway. If I wake up and I'm really feeling terrible, then maybe I won't. But obviously, neither the quality of the games nor the quality of my mood is a binary thing. If it's the best game I've seen online all year, but I'm feeling quite bad, I'll probably play. If it's a slightly above average game and I'm feeling a bit worse than usual, I might take the day off.
I think, though, you come across at least as a guy who has an iron will. Just in some situations where I've seen you at the table, it's almost like maybe you're behind in chips, but it's almost like you really just think really hard about how can I turn this situation around, and then you'll do like amazing things to pull it out.
Well, I think in terms of not getting, overwhelmed by adversity or whatever the alternative to what you're describing would be, is if you're just focused on making the best play that you can each time that it's your turn, then whether you're ahead or behind just doesn't really enter into the equation. It's not any harder to play well when your chances of winning are small if the only thing you're concerned with is playing as well as you can.
There's some very sound advice there. And how do you see this year going for you in the games? Do you see yourself pulling more out of No Limit, going more into PLO or the mixed games like you were describing, or perhaps finding one of those really strange variants?
Even last year, I played much, much more PLO than No Limit, and I expect that to continue this year. And I'm trying to make Supernova Elite, so that requires a lot of volume from me, but I have started playing some 6-max sit-and-goes, which is making that easier to accomplish. I'm actually well ahead of pace on Supernova Elite so far for this year, so if I can maintain that pace, I might find myself with enough time to start trying to get into the mixed games or some triple draw or something like that later in the year.
Will we see you out at the World Series this year?
Yeah. Last year I skipped most of it and pretty much ended up regretting the decision. There was not that much online poker to be played, and I had a pretty unproductive month. So I think I'm going to go to Vegas this year, and I might play more cash games than tournaments.
And would you stick to the PLO and the No Limit, or will you be trying a hand at things like, Chinese Open Face and some of the other mixed games?
I plan to keep an open mind about playing some of the other games if there seem to be good opportunities there.
It certainly makes sense, doesn't it? Keeping your options open.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today about mindset and your career and things.
Yes,
You're
it's been a pleasure.
You're a member of Team PokerStars Online, aren't you? So
Yes.
People can find out about you on that website. Is there anywhere else that people can find out about you if they want to find out some more?
You can check out my Twitter, which is at Ike Poker, IKEPOKER. I don't have like a personal website or anything like that.
Everyone go and follow at Ike Poker on Twitter. And once again, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you at the World Series of Poker.
My pleasure. See you there. Thanks a lot for
Thanks,
having me.
Ike.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So Tricia, where can people find out about you?
So you can always follow me on Twitter at Dr. Tricia Cardner, or you can check me out on Red Chip Poker or www.drtriciacardner.com.
And if people are interested in my coaching or my products, you can find me on www.pokermindcoach.com. We look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks, guys.